Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was the Prime Minister speaking and giving an address to the nation ahead of the mega GST booster. That mega GST exercise kicks off tomorrow. The Prime Minister gave a big pitch for consumption and manufacturing. He said the new middle class gets a bonanza, and this perhaps is the biggest phase of tax reform since independence. Since 99% of the products and services in the country will now be under the ambit of 5% GST tax. And in fact, he also stated that if we combine income tax and GST relaxations, people will save 2,50,000 crores. That's essentially the figure that the Prime Minister gave out when making that pitch for GST. Remember, that exercise kicks off tomorrow. Meanwhile, the other big takeaway as far as his address was concerned, well, the Prime Minister once again gave the pitch for self-reliance, and a push was also given by him for Swadeshi goods. And this comes amidst geopolitical reset. We are hearing of protectionist policies by the U.S. administration, how U.S. is pushing for MAGA, making America great again. And that has really thrown the global geopolitical order in a turmoil, global trade in a turmoil. In fact, the Prime Minister, while speaking about a push for Swadeshi, he said that the responsibility is also on MSMEs. He said that we need to give a push to indigenous production and manufacturing. So that's essentially what the Prime Minister said, and we are flashing some of the key takeaways from what the Prime Minister said just a short while back when he was making that pitch in an address to the nation today. In fact, joining us now to decode the Prime Minister's speech is Mohan Guruswamy. He's an expert commentator and writer on politics, economy and security. He's also a distinguished visiting fellow. Thank you very much for taking the time out, Mr. Guruswamy. First things first, the Prime Minister once again gave a pitch for self-reliance and manufacturing in India for the world. This, remember, comes in at a time when the United States continues its push for protectionist policies. Your first thoughts?
First question I have is, why didn't they do it 10 years ago? For 10 years, the country's economic policies have been drifting without any goal. GST was high ever since it was introduced, 2016. Those rates were there. They didn't tamper with it. They didn't.
We'll talk about that point. We'll talk about that point, sir, but let's focus on what the Prime Minister stated today.
The Prime Minister had, frankly speaking, he had nothing to say except exhortation that we must buy Indian, made in India. That was there always. But why didn't you do anything about it? Imports were coming in. The tariff structure was the same as before. We had trade imbalances with China. You didn't allow foreign FDI started tapering off, and then you didn't have more production in India. The Chinese had trade surpluses. Why didn't you allow them to set up, invest that money here? You said they can't invest. So they were taking the surpluses and going. So it's when the shock hits you, the American shock hits you, you wake up. And we spent so much of time chasing after Quad and doing all kinds of things when we should have been focused on the economy and our own self-interest.
Sir, Mr. Guruswamy, I have to interject you at this point in time, given the fact that Indian economy, if you see, if you compare it to the other economies across the world, whether it's our peers or our Western counterparts, Indian economy has remained resilient in any kind of shocks that the world has perhaps seen. And that is also being expressed by investors. That's also expressed by companies who continue to invest in India. We'll come to that point in just a bit. But let me also welcome on the broadcast Mr. N.R. Bhanumurthy. Mr. N.R. Bhanumurthy is the director of IIM Rohtak. Sir, I'll come to you in just a bit, but let's also give an opportunity for Mr. Bhanumurthy to also express his thoughts on the Prime Minister's speech. Mr. Bhanumurthy, go ahead. This was a strong pitch that was made by the Prime Minister as far as manufacturing in India is concerned, domestic consumption is concerned, and not just that. He stated that we need to make for the world. He also spoke about the quality of Indian products that needs to be kept intact so that we can sell our products globally. Your first thoughts on the Prime Minister's address today?
Well, this is an important message that the Honorable Prime Minister is making on the eve of the festival season, especially that, when there's so many reforms have been undertaken in the past 3-4 years. And GST 2.0 is definitely a major reform. It was work in progress for some time, and this is the right time. I think the government has come up with these reforms, especially when the globalization has almost broken due to various policies by the advanced countries. And I think Honorable Prime Minister is making a pitch for Indian revival of the Indian manufacturing sector. And we have also seen a lot of action on other front as well, especially factor market reforms. And I'm sure going forward we will be seeing many more changes in the factor market. And I think all these issues are coming up because of the kind of retreat that we had as part of the globalization, and what we have seen with the H-1B 2 days ago. I think is going to put more pressure on Indian labor market, and there's only one way that we can address this Indian labor market issue, by addressing some of the constraints that Indian manufacturing sector is facing. So it is part of the many reforms that have been undertaken, and I'm sure this will help a big way to revive the Indian manufacturing.
Right. Mr. Bhanumurthy, you spoke of very pertinent points, but what more the government do? What kind of reforms the government must undertake after this exercise to tackle some of the challenges that the country is currently facing or will face as a result of the global geopolitical shift that's happening? We do understand that the government is looking at giving a boost to domestic consumption. We've seen the government consistently increase capex in budgets over the past couple of years. What more do you expect the government to do in terms of giving a push so as to ensure that the country can become a Viksit Bharat by 2047?
Yeah, you rightly pointed about domestic consumption. I think what is important is also to really focus more on the domestic production. And GST will help in domestic consumption. But I think, as I said, factor market reforms are a major area where we need to focus, particularly land markets as well as labor markets. And recently, I think central government also came out with incentives for addressing the land issues. I do hope the labor issues also will be sorted out going forward. And Honorable Prime Minister spoke about the MSME sector. And again, this is one area we can focus more in terms of providing more incentives to help protect the MSME sector, because that is the backbone for Indian manufacturing sector. And similarly, we have seen some action on the monetary policy side, and there are many other areas where, if you've heard Prime Minister's speech during Independence Day, that we'll have something to a committee to address, the pending reforms. I hope that will be coming soon, so that we address all those structural bottlenecks that we are having. So ultimately, we need to see structural transformation where
Absolutely.
the share of manufacturing sector goes to 25%.
Absolutely, and we'll discuss a bit more on what the government needs to do more so far as the manufacturing sector is concerned. We do understand that there are PLI schemes currently operational for at least 14 sectors. But gentlemen, I'll have to ask you to hold on, as it's time now for us to slip into a very short commercial break. We'll be right back with lots more, and we'll continue this discussion right after this short commercial break.
India needs 1.32 million EV charging stations by 2030 to keep pace with rapid electric vehicle growth. And D-Charge is stepping up to meet that demand.
D-Charge is positioning itself as infrastructure of the people. Could you talk to us about that philosophy?
Why can people not host the digital charging stations or digital fuel stations? Basically, we are saying own the fuel station of the future. Be a part of this economy so that you get a small chunk of this. So we're truly building it by the people, for the people. When we say it's a mesh, anybody who has access to a small chunk of capital can invest in a charging setup.
Presented by IDFC First Bank, always you first.
मिशन चढ़ती कला और मैं भारत के हर नागरिक को, उद्योगपति को, चैरिटेबल ट्रस्टों को, कलाकारों को, पूरी दुनिया में बसते पंजाबियों को, बहन भाइयों को दिल से अपील करता हूँ, आओ पंजाब को दोबारा अपने पांव पे खड़े करने का टाइम आ गया है। पुनर्वास में और रीस्ट्रक्चर में पंजाब का साथ दीजिए। मैं वचन देता हूँ, जो भी आप मेहनत की कमाई से 1 रुपया भी अगर निकालोगे तो 1.25 रुपया बना के हम पारदर्शिता और ईमानदारी से इस्तेमाल करेंगे। और जानकारी चाहिए तो rangla.punjab.gov.in ये वेबसाइट पे जा सकते हैं, सब कुछ डिटेल मिल जाएगा। आओ मिलकर हाथ से हाथ जोड़ के एक ऐसा पुण्य उसमें योगदान डालें और बता दें दुनिया को कि पंजाब किसी भी संकट के सामने
Debates that result in new ideas, discourse that informs and inspires.
I ask the legitimate question and uncover the whole truth.
Voicing citizens' concerns and using the truth to demand answers.
Unmissable prime time, 8 to 11 p.m. Times now. Action begins here.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are, of course, discussing the Prime Minister's address to the nation just a short while back. He was speaking about the mega GST exercise that takes effect tomorrow with the onset of the festive season, especially Navratras. The Prime Minister stated that this exercise is going to give a boost to consumption, especially as far as the new middle class is concerned. It will increase their purchasing power, thereby empowering MSMEs. And about this mega GST bonanza, we're now joined by N.R. Banu Murthy and Mohan Guruswamy. Mr. Banu Murthy is a professor at the Madras School of at Economics. He's the director, I beg your pardon, at IIM Rohtak. And Mr. Guruswamy is an expert commentator. He's a writer on politics, economy, security, and distinguished visiting fellow. Let me come to you, Mr. Guruswamy. The Prime Minister also spoke about manufacturing, how manufacturing in India, that needs to be given a push, and we need to not just make in India, but make for the world. Now, as far as India's manufacturing story goes, we have PLI schemes, at least for 14 sectors. Some, in the case of electronics, for instance, they have done exceedingly well, others not as much. What more does the government really need to do if it wants to become a manufacturing powerhouse of the world?
Well, first of all, you have got to get the footprint of the government on industry, on investment. It's still, the Prime Minister himself alluded today in his talk about there are a number of regulations which come into place and then impede fast implementation of ideas. But first of all, you've got to get the macroeconomic situation right. If your savings rate is coming down, if your household savings is coming down, taxation is coming down, foreign direct investment is coming down. So where is the money going to come for investment? Go to plan for investment. Allowing a GST cut, is there a drop in consumption? Have the number of motorbike sales come down or refrigerators come down? There's no indication of that. Corporate profitability is still good. So you're addressing the wrong issues at the time when you should be addressing other things. You should be looking at boosting investment. And we still haven't opened up our economy fully to foreign investment. There are all kinds, and why is foreign investment coming down? Why is FDI coming down? It's been happening for the last 2 years. And suddenly, the American H-1B visa thing is not something which is such a big shock that, we have to suddenly wake up and say we've got hit very badly. We've been hit badly for the last 2 years now. The growth rate has been coming down. So I think we need to get a holistic view of what's happening in the country, and the kind of expenditures the government has been incurring, and and see that we invest more in infrastructure, see that we invest more on manufacturing, create new, look at investment policies, look at special economic zones. We haven't done anything on that. We just have wish lists.
Mr. Guruswamy,
yeah.
Mr. Guruswamy, when you talk about investments in infrastructure, the government has consistently for the past couple of years invested in infrastructure. So it's not like the government hasn't. So let's get the facts right here. But I'll come to you in just a bit. Mr. Bhanu Murthy, would you agree with the points that Mr. Guruswamy is making essentially about the fact that the government is not really investing in infrastructure, that the government is not investing in manufacturing, and this is not headed in the right direction? Mr. Bhanu Murthy, would you agree with what Mr. Guruswamy is suggesting here?
I slightly disagree with Dr. Mohan Guruswamy, particularly on the public investment. And as you rightly pointed out, for the past 3 to 4 years, consistently the government of India is allocating and spending more on public investment, particularly on infrastructure. And this is more and above what the FRBM Act has suggested. FRBM suggested only about 3% for the capital expenditure. Now, this year, the budgeted is somewhere close to 3.4% of GDP. And added to that, the government of India is also handholding the states by allocating 1.3 lakh crore on the capital expenditure through interest-free, 50 years interest-free loan. So, in a sense, the government of India has got it right in terms of balancing the fiscal numbers, particularly focusing more on the capital expenditure. But I think there are also some limits on how far we can go on public infrastructure, particularly when the domestic consumption demand was slowing. I think that is the point that the GST reforms addresses. Now, if you want to revise the total investment, you cannot depend only on the public investment. And if you want to really revive even private investment for that matter, we need to have that demand happening in the economy. And that is what constraining private investment for the past 3 to 4 quarters. So the GST that is happening from tomorrow, reduction, would certainly have some impact on the domestic consumption demand. And I think that should revive the private investment cycle going forward.
Right, absolutely. Mr. Bhanu Murthy, private investment cycle is one concern that has persisted for a quite long period of time. But let me also get in your thoughts on how this entire GST exercise will push MSMEs. How will it push manufacturing, and how will it push the MSME sector in particular that the Prime Minister was speaking about when he spoke about manufacturing? He said that the responsibility lies on the MSME sector to give a push to manufacturing in the country.
Yeah, see, as I said in the beginning, MSME is the backbone of the Indian manufacturing sector. If the overall manufacturing has to revive, I think MSME also has to be very strong. But GST alone is not sufficient enough to really revive the MSME sector. Having said that, if you look at the post-COVID period, we also had specific policies for reviving the MSME sector under the Atmanirbhar Bharat. So we have seen how those policies have helped, MSME to survive even the big shock like COVID-19. But at the same time, I think there are many more micro issues, particularly when it comes to MSME sector. In fact, at the state level, there are some issues where you cannot even identify who are these MSMEs sometimes. So I think that kind of exercise is undergoing right now, and I hope the GST 2.0 should again bring back the MSME sector through revival in the overall consumption demand.
Absolutely, Mr. Bhanu Murthy. We'll have to see what kind of a demand push is this exercise going to give, the kind of consumption push that it will unleash in the country. That remains to be seen. On that note, thank you very much, gentlemen, for taking the time out and speaking to us here on ET Now on the Prime Minister's address. Ladies and gentlemen, the Prime Minister said that 99% of the services in the country will fall under the 5% GST tax. Goods and services will fall under this tax, and that will unleash consumption in the country, given the fact that there is ease of doing business that's kicking in. And he also stated that people will end up saving 250,000 crores. Yes, that's the figure that he gave during his address. Let's listen in once again to what the Prime Minister stated as part of his address just a short while back.
ये रिफॉर्म भारत की ग्रोथ स्टोरी को एक्सेलरेट करेंगे, कारोबार को और आसान बनाएंगे, निवेश को और आकर्षक बनाएंगे और हर राज्य को विकास की दौड़ में बराबरी का साथी बनाएंगे।